Alright, now we're going to talk a little bit about absorption. You can watch that video. Here's the stomach, duodenum, circular folds within the duodenum, and the large intestine. All of this is going to be absorption of nutrients. The bulk of it is going to take place in the small intestine, and then the large intestine is going to pick up the scraps. To do this, we've got to have blood supply. So to get the blood to there and away from there, we're going to have the superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery. Those should sound familiar. So the superior mesenteric artery, that does the ascending colon and transverse colon. The inferior mesenteric artery, that supplies the descending colon and the sigmoid colon. And then we have veins that are named appropriately, the superior mesenteric vein and inferior mesenteric vein, and those are taking oxygen-poor blood away from these structures, and it's the exact same region. So superior does ascending and transverse, inferior does descending and sigmoid. Small intestine we break into 3 separate regions. The very first portion is the duodenum. That is somewhere between 8 and 10 inches on average in most folks. First portion, not very long. Second portion, the jejunum. This one runs anywhere from 3 to 5 feet. And then last but not least, we've got the ileum. This one can run 10 to 15 feet. So you've got quite a bit of plumbing here. Different lengths, different time periods between bowel movements. So most of the time we don't get bent out of shape when bowel movements are close together or far apart. It's the change in that. So say you typically had one pattern and then change to a new pattern. That would be something to concern yourself with, but most likely it's just a plumbing issue, and it moves at the pace at which it can. Here's our small intestinal wall under microscope. Same stuff we've seen in the esophagus and all of that. We're gonna have a lumen, then a mucosa with some goblet cells in some simple columnar tissue, epithelial tissue. Then we've got the submucosa, muscularis, and serosa. So the serosa being the same as the visceral peritoneum. Muscularis, you're going to have that inner circular and outer longitudinal, and then you've got that submucosa with connective tissue in there. Here's another slide showing the exact same thing. You're going to have those glands in there. So these are small intestine. Most important thing, we're going to be producing enzymes and mucus to protect. Enzymes to absorb, mucus to protect. You're also going to have microvilli in here. So you're going to have villi. You can see the villi in this picture. It's not quite zoomed in well enough to see the microvilli though. So lots of microvilli. We're just trying to increase that surface area. Lots and lots of surface area to absorb that. In the beginning part of the small intestine, we have a thing that we call Brunner's glands, and so those are going to secrete mucus, and their sole purpose is to try to neutralize the gastric acid in chyme. Further on, as we go through the small intestine, the jejunum doesn't have a whole lot going on. The jejunum's kind of there, but it's just got the regular layers. Then we get to the end, the ileum, the last portion of the small intestine, and here we are basically fecal matter at this point passing through. And so we're going to get a little bit of B12 absorption. So again, a vitamin, that fermentation process is taking place further along. We get the vitamin absorption further along in this process. But it's basically fecal matter. So in the distal part of the small intestine, we're going to have more lymph tissue called Peyer's patches. And so that's going to try and prevent bacterial pathogens from entering the bloodstream once we get down to, basically fecal matter, like I said, in the end. Here's the large intestine. So the very first pouch you come to is the cecum. Off of the cecum, we have the appendix there. Then we have the colon. The colon we would typically divide into 3 separate regions. And then we have the rectum and the anal canal. Here are the 4 regions to the large intestine. You're going to have the ascending colon, the transverse colon, descending colon, and sigmoid colon, followed up by the rectum there. Tanii coli, this is a long band of smooth muscle. It runs the entire length of the large intestine, and it allows the muscle to create little pouches. We call those haustrum. And so these little haustral contractions push the chyme from one pouch or one bulge into the next one, allowing those contents to get mixed up. This is a favorite slide of mine. So this one shows the food passing from the small intestine, or excuse me, the chyme passing from the small intestine into the large intestine through the ileocecal valve. So the ileum, cecum, valve in between, ileocecal valve. Now we're going to take that food, and you'll notice step 1, the chyme is passing in. Step 2, though, bacteria secretes vitamins which are absorbed. So how do we do that? That's through eating foods like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, spinach, you name it, basically carnivorous vegetables. Those things are considered fiber. We don't digest fiber, we don't break it down all the way. So when it gets into the large intestine, it's still present, and because of that, it goes through a fermentation process, and that fermentation process allows us to secrete those vitamins, vitamins B vitamins, K vitamins, and we absorb those. And so it's important to note that you're not just needing the fiber to stay regular, you need the fiber to actually get these vitamins going so that your energy levels can be sustained. And then the other main thing we get out of this picture is the absorption of water. So this isn't the only place we absorb water, but it's one of the only things that the large intestine can do. At this point, we're getting thicker and thicker tissue thickness, and so the absorption isn't taking place as much. Mostly absorption of water. As we do that, the stool is compacted. Here's a picture of the large intestine. We're going to have mucosa, submucosa muscularis with our inner circular, outer longitudinal. On the outside of that, we'll have that serous membrane, which is the visceral peritoneum. So nothing too much different here. Just the same basically as everything else. We're going to have simple columnar epithelium. We're going to have mucus glands producing things. The only exception to the large intestine where it's not simple columnar epithelium is going to be the stratified squamous that's found in the anal canal, which is a very, very small portion of the alimentary canal. So here, speaking of anal canal, so this little short region here, that's the only portion that is going to be stratified squamous, which would be similar to the esophagus and oral cavity. So there's your rectum. Then we've got two sphincters, internal sphincter, external sphincter, very similar to the urinary system. The internal sphincter is triggered by a defecation reflex. That then releases, and this is smooth muscle, so involuntary, and then it allows the external anal sphincter to be in control. So skeletal muscle, this one is voluntary control, and then when that one is voluntarily controlled, then we pass through the anal canal.